Well, welcome back. Ramon and I are back on the road again. It's May 15, 2024, about a year and a half since we finished up the Atlantic tour, and about 9 months after the last video about that tour was submitted to YouTube. As you can see, there have been some changes. Our poor Terabyte is no longer with us. Her cancer came back to her remaining foreleg, and while it remained small for quite a long time, and we thought that she might be able to last out the remainder of her days with it like that, it suddenly blossomed up in about August of last year, and by September she was in a lot of pain. So we now have a new dog with us, as you could see from the introduction, Holly. And Ramona can show you Holly. She's back there with us. Whereas Tara was the sweetest dog we ever had, Holly has got a lot of post-traumatic stress. She's also a rescue dog from Mexico. And she's the only dog we've ever known the birthday for. She was born on March 25 or 24, I'd have to look it up, in 2022, so she is now just over 2 years old, and she's coming along fine. She doesn't know whether or not she should be snuggling with me or trying to prevent me from murdering her, but anyway, she is coming along, and we're making advances all the time, and so she's going to be joining us for this trip, which is really great. Yonge Street in Toronto is perhaps the most famous street, a major thoroughfare running from Lake Ontario north toward Lake Simcoe. It marks the geographical center of the city. There has been a discussion going on for decades now about whether or not Yonge Street is the longest street in the world. And how can that be? Well, people say that the Yonge Street turns into Highway 11, which arches up over top of the Great Lakes and ends at Rainy River on the far side of the province. And that would make it the longest street in the world. But is that really the case? Is that really the situation? So we're going to go take a look at that now on our way north. And as we come over the top of the hill here, we can see down below the very flat, low area. This is where we're going to be getting into the Holland Marsh. It's a very wet spot just to the south of Lake Simcoe. So, north of the Queensville Side Road, this is Yonge Street. We're just beside the little village of Holland Landing. The Holland River comes down here and drains into the very bottom end of Lake Simcoe. It's for sure that you can't get any farther north from this point because we're going to be butting up against Lake Simcoe eventually. I think that there's no doubt in anyone's mind that this was the end of Yonge Street for many, many years back in the day. So here we are at what is definitely a end of Yonge Street, an end of Yonge Street at the dead end here. Some people say this trail goes on a little bit further, and no doubt it does, but it's going to eventually peter out to being even something that you couldn't do by foot eventually, because like I say, Lake Simcoe is ahead of us a few kilometers. So this looks like it's the end of Yonge Street. But the question is this the end of Yonge Street now? Well, we're going to go back and take a look at Highway 11, that's a little bit south of us, and which is a bypass for this area, taking travelers up to the northwest to the town of Barrie. We'll see what we find there. So here we are on the bypass around I guess it's Bradford and also Holland Landing, and this is called Yonge Street again. So definitely Yonge Street seems to have continues on past the point where we were before. This is like a modern Yonge Street. So we'll follow this to see where this leads. So we came up from that direction on Yonge Street, and when we get here to this intersection, the road makes a bit of a jog and it becomes Burton Avenue. So that is quite clearly the end of Yonge Street, right here at this intersection. Here's a site to make Torontonians' heart beat a little harder. The highway sign there. Beloved of all Torontonians. This highway split marks the two highways that go north into cottage country. Highway 400 veers off to the northwest, and Highway 11 continues in a more northerly direction. They parallel each other once you get into cottage country, quite a few miles apart. So now we're getting closer to the north end of Lake Couchiching, and that's the time when the land starts to change. Up until now it's been pretty well farming land and rolling countryside. And once you get up around the north end of Couchiching and farther north, the Canadian Shield starts to emerge from the earth, and you get that wildness that was made so popular by the group of 7 artists. So now you can see how the land started to get that rocky appearance. It's actually very beautiful. We're approaching the part of the Ontario known as Muskoka, and that's a very popular vacation land. Some of the cottages can be extremely expensive in here, especially on some of the larger lakes like Lake Muskoka. Millions of dollars, some of them, but there are more reasonable cottages around as well. A lot of famous people have their summer places up here. I know that at one point, and maybe it's still true, I don't know, Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell had a cottage up here, or may still have a cottage. If you know more about that, let me know in the comments, because I haven't heard any news on that front. Next stop today is Sundridge, the beautiful little town, large village of Sundridge. This is a place that's kind of dear to my heart because it's not too far from our cottage. And it's a place we come to if we want to go to a hardware store or a supermarket. And there's something else here that makes this place rather unique. Sundridge is the home of Lake Bernard. This is the largest lake in the world that doesn't have an island.